thought I would mount the light. So I got some cool brackets to weld on. I just got a temporary bolt just to hold it all up. And I'm thinking to mount it about there. So this light I think is probably off a Model C or D Lambretta, something like that, but they were sort of mounted like further down rather than at the top. So I think that'll look quite cool. And also allows a bit of movement for the handlebars. So I've cleaned up the front. Welded on. I smoothed the weld sort of flat because it's quite on display. Just a touch of etch primer on there. That's the light brackets done. I'm really pleased with this headlight. I think it looks great. Patina's really nice, the colour's nice, and I like the position of it on the frame there. With that in place, I want to move on to the handlebars. But before I do that, I just want to give you a little update on the frame modification. If you remember from a previous episode, I cut off this top section. Basically the frame had been shortened and someone had welded in a top section where the bearing race sits, and they'd welded it on skew width. So I cut that off, spent a bit of time and just accurately got that into position so it's nice and square, and I've re-welded it. So I'm happy about that. That allowed me to order a set of bearings and new races, so it's got complete brand new races and bearings, top and bottom. They are actually races for a non-chrome ring, the GP type. So I'm guessing the bit welded on the top of this frame has been taken from the GP or something, but I don't know. Anyway, time to move on to the handlebars. Now this clamp and handlebars are as I bought the cut down frame. And I actually had a query about this clamp. Someone asking me if it was from a BMX. I mean, I have actually no idea. This is the clamp here. But my issue with it is, there's 2 Allen key bolts which tighten up around the stem of the fork. If that ever came loose, it would just simply pull off. There's nothing to stop that just coming off. And I don't really trust it. As you know, on the top of the fork stem, I'll take that off, you can see the original clamp has a bolt which goes through this groove. So even if that got loose, you'd have a lot of play obviously in the handlebars, but the handlebars would still be able to turn and they wouldn't come right off. Here we have an original clamp. Not the prettiest of things, but basically that slots on top of there, and this bolt fits through the groove in the stem of the fork. Even if that's loose, it only allows you to turn it a little way, and it actually physically stops it coming off in your hand. So I feel much safer to use that. So these original clamps, obviously they have the traditional Lambretta headset which attaches to the bracket, so you never actually see this bracket, it's well hidden. I don't want to run a normal Lambretta headset. I don't actually want to run these bars either, but they are a sort of 22mm bar that I intend to use. So the issue we've got is using that bracket for safety, making an adapter somehow that allows you to run a set of handlebars rather than a headset. There's a couple of companies that make those adapters. MB do one, which is pretty expensive, and it looks really nice. But it's quite expensive and not exactly what I want for the handlebars. And JB Fabrications, who are the company that made my bench here, they also make a metal plate with a big sort of hole cut in, and it mounts to the top of this bracket. It's got 2 handlebar clamps and that allows you to sort of bolt on any drop handlebars, straight handlebars, etc. But it's a huge, great piece of metal and not really in keeping with the look of Oddbod. And also the brackets that you mount the handlebars on are too far apart for the handlebars I want to use. So basically, I'm going to make my own adapter plate. Generally, the aftermarket adapters that are available to buy, they mount from the top, but it's a big plate of metal which I don't really want to see. So my plan is to mount a piece of metal underneath, so it's kind of a bit more hidden. So when you look at the bracket, it looks a bit more kind of OEM. And before I can mount a plate, as you can see, there's lots of lumpy bits on this bracket. So my first job, before I make the plate, I'm going to grind all these lumpy bits. Ground down the Lambretta bracket, which sits there. So we have to now make a plate, which is going to bolt to the Lambretta bracket. So obviously got to cut holes in there so it fits down over the top of the forks. And also to cover up the bearings here, I've got an old piece of reducer from an exhaust pipe. So I'm going to put that over there and actually just weld it to this steel bracket. Motorcycle clamps, which are going to screw to the top. Formed the shape of the bracket on one side, and just to make it symmetrical, I made a little cardboard template, traced it out on the other side, so I just need to grind that down now so it matches. Quite pleased with how this is looking so far, giving the bracket some shape. So looking a bit, more like it might have been made a few decades ago. And then I've cut this piece down, which was the sort of exhaust reducer. So my idea is that will sit there. And I'm just going to tack this to it so then it covers up all the bearings nicely. Pleased with how the brackets turned out. Rounded off the edges so it looks a bit more period, I guess. What I don't want to have on this scooter is anything kind of billet aluminium or plasma cut. I'm excited to fit some new handlebars. I didn't actually mind the handlebars that came with the scooter, but partly because this frame has been cut down, it ended up with your arms quite low, and in my mind I always wanted to have my arms a bit higher. Now I really wanted to, as much as possible, keep this scooter all Lambretta, and my perfect handlebars would have been the bars from a Lambretta Louis or Vega, but just the actual sort of bar ones as opposed to those big chunky aluminium ones. And they are as rare as rocking horse poo. So I'm going to use a pair of handlebars I had laying around. They are scooter based, but not Lambretta. They're actually from a Vespa Chow moped. Bam, bam, bam. And I think these look really well proportioned for Oddbod. Well, I'm really happy with that riding position. That's great. Feels nice and comfortable. These bars, I think, proportion-wise are great. Not quite ape hangers, but I really like it. And now for something completely different. This might look like LA, but we're actually in a car park in Bristol with my friend Andy from Bristol Lambretta Club. Andy has brought his Series 1 Lambretta here. Andy, tell us a bit about your scoot. What year was it made? Where was it made?
This is a 1959 Italian-made Li 150.
So when this came out of the factory, what speed would it have done?
I'm guessing about 50 if you're lucky.
50 miles an hour,
Yeah.
okay. And what have you done to the engine?
This is a 185 Stage 5 Suzuki DJ. Back in the day with a high conch head, which was possible with high octane leaded petrol and a proper DJ pipe, this would have done 80-ish.
So let me get this right. Out of the factory, we're talking 50 miles an hour. But now with this engine, you reckon possibly 80 miles an hour. The Suzuki part, that's referring to the piston, isn't it?
That's right, it's from a TS 185 motorbike.
So we've got a Suzuki piston in it. 185cc, brakes are standard.
They're reverse pull, but standard, yes. Standard drums.
Suspension, you've got like
adjustable shock, yeah,
shock there.
Front and rear from Protec in Melksham. Progressive fork springs actually within the fork itself. So.
Great, so that's most of the modifications, although I noticed something, maybe cosmetic.
Yeah.
We can bring the camera around here. This is the flywheel cover here.
That is from a band called Crass, an arco-punk band from the late 70s, early 80s.
Right, that's great. Thanks for giving us a tour of your scooter. That's it for this episode of Cobweb Garage. Thanks for watching. Thank you to Andy for bringing his scooter down for us to have a look at. And he also lent me his copy of Sticky's The Complete Spanners Lambretta Kit book. Not sure what he's trying to say there, but great book, amazing. Look how thick that is. Loads of performance upgrade info for your Lambretta scooter. Available from Scooter Products Western Supermare, just down the road. Also, don't forget Cobweb Garage t-shirts, available to ship worldwide. Link below, and please subscribe and see you next time. Thank you very much.